Okay, hello. This is my video for check-in number 8 let's do today. So since the last check-in, I've just been trying to review a lot of the chapter 15 material and get it ready for the exam that's coming up. I have probably spent around 16 hours, I'm guessing. And so far I have finished all of the videos that you've provided for us, and so the last part of the videos were the cases where things simplified and got a little less complex, where things would cancel out, and so there were problems that had to do with general plane motion, and we learned about the instantaneous center of zero. And there were problems that had to do with a fixed axis and a fixed reference frame, which were, after doing the rotating reference frames, those seemed to make a lot more sense. It was a lot easier to start with the more difficult problems and kind of work backwards. I think that helped me to understand it, so I'm glad I did the problems in the reverse order. But I've also completed all of the homework problems now for chapter 15, and so the problems that I completed recently in the homework since the last check-in had to do a lot with the general motion problems, which were pretty interesting, some of the problems we had to do. And so those dealt with the equations for velocity and acceleration with a general plane motion. And so we had those equations, and we'd have to break them up into components and then solve the systems of equations that were created. There was also a gear problem that dealt with finding the instantaneous center, which I thought was interesting. That one was a little tricky because we didn't, all of the velocities were pointing in the same direction, and so we had to use similar triangles in geometry. And then the last homework problems that I worked on were problems where we had constant acceleration, and so because of that we could use the constant acceleration formulas that we used for linear velocity, but we were using omegas and alphas. So for example, we know that omega final equals omega initial plus alpha times delta t. And so using those, one of the most interesting problems we did was the one that had to do with lifting a load. So we had a gear system that was lifting a load, and we were able to use the relationships we know, as well as those constant acceleration equations, to solve for things like the time required or the amount of rotation to lift the load. And then we also did problems that had to do with like pulley systems, and the pulleys would be on different locations. And so some of the homework problems were a little more tricky than others. I'd like to review them more, but I have finished all of those so far. As far as other efforts, I've tried to do a couple other of the example problems that are in the book and read through some sections of the textbook in areas that I thought were more challenging. I've tried to spend some more time reviewing the rotating axis problems and trying to learn the equations and what each term means and what will simplify. So far, I think that's the most challenging part of the chapter, is the problems that have to do with the rotating reference frame. I also spent quite a bit of time trying to learn the problems that have to do with general plane motion, where you can solve them using cross products or just looking at the difference and trying to determine the directions of things. But I feel like I've come a long ways this week on learning the chapter 15 material. I know it's a challenging chapter, and some of the concepts are still something I need to review and take time to look at before our test. But overall, I feel like I am starting to grasp a lot of these concepts a lot more. They're starting to make a lot more sense. I'm starting to recognize some of the patterns in them. And so I'm hoping that as I just do more example problems at this point and review, that I will be ready for the test that's coming up. And so hopefully this coming weekend I can spend a lot of time just doing a whole bunch of example problems out of the textbook, as well as trying to redo some of the problems in your videos and some of the homework problems to get ready. But overall, I think it's going pretty well. I just need to do some more example problems. So that's all for check-in number 8. Thank you.